Okay, it's good to see everyone. I apologize for last Friday being sick and then the after effects of the COVID and flu shots that I had at the same time the day before. But anyway, 98% better. And so I wanted to say we have class today, obviously. No class next Friday. That's October 31st, because I'll be in New Jersey for my daughter's wedding, which is that Sunday, November 2nd, but there's a whole weekend of activities with the family. Um, and then the rest of November, I mean, we'll talk about Thanksgiving weekend, whether people are away that Friday, but otherwise, we'll have class all the way through the first Friday in December, and then I'm away in Israel a few weeks in December. So just keep that in mind as we progress through the calendar. Um, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. We are on page 72 in our text, beginning with verse 15 of chapter 13 of 1 Samuel. Since it's a couple weeks since we last had class, I just wanted to read the English translation, the first 14 verses of the chapter, just to remind us where we left off, and then we'll continue. So, if we go back to page 68 in the text, Saul was blank years old when he began to reign, and 2 years he reigned over Israel. And Saul chose him 3,000 men of Israel, whereof 2,000 were with Saul in Michmas and in the mount of Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Givat Benjamin, and the rest of the people he sent every man to his tent. And Jonathan is his son. Jonathan smote the garrison of the Philistines that was in Geba, and the Philistines heard of it. And Saul blew the horn throughout all the land, saying, "Let the Hebrews hear." And all Israel heard say that Saul had smitten the garrison of the Philistines, and that Israel also had made himself odious with the Philistines. And the people were gathered together after Saul to Gilgal. All right, so Saul's son manages to defeat a garrison of Philistines that raises alarms throughout Israel and throughout the Philistines. That here, how dare Israel attack a Philistine garrison? So everyone's on alert. And the Philistines assembled themselves together to fight with Israel, 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and people as the sand which is on the seashore in multitude. And they came up and pitched in Michmas, eastward of Beit Aven. Okay, so Philistines didn't take this defeat of a garrison lightly. They gathered this tremendous force. When the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were distressed, then the people did hide themselves in caves and in thickets and in rocks and in holds and in pits. Now some of the Hebrews had gone over the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead, but as for Saul, he was yet in Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. Okay, so there's this huge Philistine force gathering, and the people of Israel respond appropriately, being scared to death. So people are hiding, people are running away. But Saul is holed up in Gilgal. So, page 71, and he tarried 7 days according to the set time that Samuel had appointed, but Samuel came not to Gilgal, and the people were scattered from him. So, in a previous chapter, Samuel had made a promise, I'll see you in 7 days. So 7 days come, and he's delayed, just like Moses was delayed coming down Mount Sinai. And I think that that's supposed to be what we're thinking about. Who else is delayed, and then what the response of the people are to the delay. And Saul said, Samuel's delayed. Saul said, bring hither to me the burnt offering and the peace offerings. And he offered the burnt offering. And it came to pass that as soon as he had made an end of offering the burnt offering, behold, Samuel came, and Saul went out to meet him, and that he might salute him. And Samuel said, what hast thou done? And Saul said, because I saw that the people were scattered from me, and that thou camest not within the days appointed, and that the Philistines assembled themselves together against Michmas. So for all these reasons, Saul is saying, I thought I could, therefore said I, now will the Philistines come down upon me into Gilgal, and I have not entreated the favor of the Lord. I forced myself, therefore, and offered the burnt offering. So I just thought that this would be reasonable, Saul is saying to Samuel, to offer this burnt offering, even though Samuel's not there to do it, because of all the pressure, what's going on, to just pray to God. And Samuel said to Saul, thou hast done foolishly. Thou hast not kept the commandment of the Lord thy God, which he commanded thee. For now would the Lord have established thy kingdom upon Israel forever. But now thy kingdom shall not continue. The Lord has sought him a man after his own heart, and the Lord has appointed him to be prince over his people, because thou hast not kept that which the Lord commanded thee.
Jonah,
Yes,
what exactly is he getting at? Well, I mean, what was the commandment that he broke? Because
right. So if
there
we look
seems
at
to be a thread throughout the
yes,
entire Jewish Bible of God giving commands to the people, and then some higher authority within the Jewish community saying, but it has to come through me. I
right.
mean,
So if we look at the commentary on the bottom of 71 to verse 13, thou hast done foolishly. Saul's sin cannot have been that he usurped the priestly prerogatives in offering the sacrifice. So we might think that he sinned by offering the burnt offering. David
That's
and
what I thought, because I've been reading the Talmud,
yes,
and
right. That's all about the Kohanim offering the sacrifices, and they have to do it the right way. Yes. But this is before the temple is built and other people are allowed to offer sacrifices. So it can't be what did he do wrong? The commentary is saying it's not about offering the sacrifice. It continues, David and Solomon offered sacrifice without censure. And it's clear that in this period, as the Talmud and Jewish commentators recognize, there was no prohibition of sacrifice by laymen at high places. In other words, Saul, even though he's a king, not a layman, but he is not assigned the task of offering sacrifices. But that was common at the time. So the commentary goes on, there seems to be only one explanation, that his sin was that of impatience. He should have waited longer. The sin seems excusable and scarcely deserving of so heavy a punishment. Yet, though it is impossible for a modern reader not to sympathize with Saul in his extremity, many times in the previous history of Israel, man's extremity had been God's opportunity. So it seems like a minor thing that he didn't wait for Samuel, and that impatience, even though really he did nothing wrong, and it all seemed like as opposed to the people with the golden calf at Mount Sinai, the result of their impatience was idolatry. The result of Saul's impatience is just offering a sacrifice to God. But it's the impatience. So it doesn't seem fair, but if there's a plan already that Saul is one and done, and that it's on to David for the dynasty, then there's really nothing Saul could have done that would have prevented himself from being cast aside. Okay, so it's the impatience. So now we go on to verse 15. Oh no, wait. I didn't finish reading the English. No, I did. So I finished verse 14. Okay, so 15. Vayakom Shmuel, Vaya'al min ha-Gilgal, Giv'at Binyamin, Vayivkod Shaul et ha'am hanimtzaim imo keshesh ma'ot ish. So Samuel rose up and went up to Gilgal, from Gilgal to Givat Binyamin, and Saul counted the people who were found with him as about 600 men. Okay, remember, there are 30,000 chariots and 6,000 horsemen of Philistines gathered against them, and Saul has 600 men with him. Okay, 16. V'Shaul v'Yonatan beno v'ha'am hanimtzaim imam yoshvim. I think it should be yoshvim. Yes, I think that the vowel under the yud is a typo. That's not a vowel. It's just the vertical line to tell you about an accent mark. Okay. Yoshvim begeva binyamin ufilishtim chanu b'michmash. So Saul and Jonathan, his son, and I think this is the first time that Jonathan is referred to as Saul's son. He was just referred to as Jonathan before. Saul and Jonathan, his son, and the people that were with them gathered or sitting in Geva Binyamin, and the Philistines were camped at Michmas. Okay, so we knew that. 17, Vayetze hamashchit mimachane plishtim shlosha roshim harosh echad yifne el derech ofra el eretz shual. So the spoilers, where the commentary below says raiding parties, the raiding parties coming out of the Philistine camp, there were 3 companies. The one company was turned toward the direction of Ophrah to the land of Shual. So don't know where that is, and we'll look to the commentary to help us, and also to ancient Israel in a few moments to help us, but let's finish the chapter. Ve'harosh echad yifne derech Beit Choron, ve'harosh echad yifne derech hagevul hanishkaf al gei hatzivoim hamidbara. So one company was turned toward the direction of Beit Choron, and one company was turned toward the direction of the border, looking over the valley of Tzivoim towards the desert. So that's southward. 19. V'charash lo yimatzeh b'chol eretz Yisrael. Ki amru Flishtim pen ya'asu ha'ivrim cherev o chanit. There wasn't a blacksmith found in all of the land of Israel, because the Philistines said, lest the Hebrews make sword or spear. So this is a background information for us that the people with Saul probably don't have weapons, normal weapons, because the Philistines prohibited Israelites from having weapons, or at least making weapons, by way of a blacksmith. Okay. 20, V'yardu kol Yisrael ha'pelishtim liltosh ish et macharashto, ve'et eto, ve'et kardumo, ve'et macharashato. So all the Israelites went down to the Philistines to sharpen, for every person to sharpen his plowshare. So a macharash is a plowshare, and his coulter, coulter. I don't know what a coulter is. And his axe and his mattock. So these could be agricultural tools. Yeah. So Barry, what were you going to say? What?
That famous line, turning your plowshares, your swords into
Swords into
plowshares,
plowshares
your swords
and
into
spears
plowshares.
into pruning hooks.
Yeah, where's that from?
That's from Isaiah.
So it's much later.
Yeah.
When I read that, I
is,
said, "Oh, this is interesting. It kind of relates to that."
Yeah, so it's the opposite. This is turning the agricultural tools into weapons of war. Yeah, so it's interesting, and it's appropriate to have that in mind, because really, even though this is a distinct book of the Bible, all the books of the Bible are related, and we as the reader are meant to read the entire Bible and keep things in mind from one book to the next. Okay.
Also, describing the multitudes as grains of sand. That's in the 5 book. That's in the Torah as well.
But that's not
that.
Yeah, I don't think that's
plentiful as the sands in the sea.
Yeah, right. Our descendants will be as numerous as that. But I'm discounting that only because I think that's an easy metaphor, and I'm not sure that we're supposed to learn from one use of that to another. But perhaps, the idea that Israelites supposed to be as numerous, and here the Philistines are as numerous as the sand of the sea. Yeah, using that metaphor against them. Yeah, okay.
I was just listening to a podcast on Noah yesterday with the Porsche coming up, and I understood that the legend has it that he invented the plow.
Okay, that could be, since he was a farmer, and we're told after the flood that he planted a vineyard. So, yeah, look, within the Midrash, in understanding the Torah as God's word, and therefore whatever is described as in the Torah as actual history, so for the Midrash, they have the need to explain the origin of things more so than the Torah is explaining the origin of things. So, okay, so Noah invented the plowshare. Ultimately, who cares? But it just makes for interesting Midrash, that's all. 21. V'hayata ha-pitzira fim lemacharashot ve'la'etim ve'lishlosh kilshon uleharkar dumim ulehatziv hadorvan. So the price of the filing was a pim for the mattocks and for the coulters and for the forks with 3 teeth and for the axes and to set the goads. Why the author of Samuel needs to tell us this detail about what the cost was for sharpening this equipment, I'm not sure what the point is. And I'm not sure, especially when it uses a currency that we've never heard of before and will never hear again. So what is a pim and how much is it worth? If you say a shekel, then that we get an idea, because the Torah talks about shekels and the rest of the Bible talks about shekels, but we've never heard about pim before. Now, we've heard about talents of silver in the book of Esther, right? How much Achashverosh was willing to pay Haman to kill all the Jews in Persia. But that's not Pim. So we have no idea what Pim is. So commentary is going to try to explain it, but just keep in mind that the commentary doesn't know what Pim is unless there happens to be some archaeological evidence from the time that references Pim and tells us how much a Pim is worth. But the Bible doesn't tell us. Okay, 22. V'haya biyom milchemet, ve'lo nimtza cherev ve'chanit biyad kol ha'am, asher et Shaul, ve'et Yonatan, v'timatzei l'Shaul u'l'Yonatan beno. And so it came to pass in the day of battle that there was neither sword nor spear found for all the people that were with Saul and Jonathan. But Saul and Jonathan had sword and spear. So the people who are with him, the 600 people who were told before, don't have swords and spears, but Saul and Jonathan do. Do they have enough for the people? Or do they have a hidden armory? Or do they have just enough for the two of them? 23, Vayetze matzav plishtim el ma'avar michmas. Michmash. No, Michmas, sorry. So the garrison of Philistines went out to war from the Michmas Pass. Okay, so let's look at the commentary on these verses, beginning with verse 15, back to page 72. About 600 men. His army had well nigh evaporated, right? Because they were so scared from the amount of Philistines there were. Givat Benjamin, the Hebrew reads Geva Benjamin, and the purpose of the reading of AJ is to harmonize this verse with chapter 14, verse 2, which is coming up. But it seems more probable that the Israelites had taken up their station in Geva, immediately opposite the Philistines at Michmas. Jonathan had most likely occupied Geva when he slew the garrison there, and Saul now joins him in anticipation of the Philistine attack. So, as was noted before, there's confusion about Geva Benjamin, and Givat Benjamin. So all these places, like Alter points that out too, there's just confusion for these references. And they could be, as Alter is suggesting, all referring to the same place. The spoilers, raiding parties to devastate the land and harry the people. The directions of the raids were north, west, and east, respectively. The way south was closed by Saul's army. Okay. Turned. The Hebrew verb expresses repeated action, indicating that the ravages were continued for some time. The purpose was either to reduce the country to submission without a pitched battle, or to draw Saul out from his strong position and force an engagement. Ophrah, the modern Et Taibeh, 4 miles northeast of Bethel. The land of Shual, the district has not been identified. A city, Hatzar Shual, is mentioned in Joshua 15 in Judah, as well as in Shimon, in those territories. Beit Horon, located 5 miles northwest of Givon. The valley of Tzivoim, it has been identified with the Wadi El Kelt between Jerusalem and Jericho. That happens to be a place to hike today in the Judean desert, Wadi Kelt, and there's like a monastery along that hike. I've never done it, but I know friends of mine and others have done that hike. So it is a hike to do, but it is dangerous also. You have to be aware, if it's in the rainy season, of flash floods there. But it is a place. Of all these places, I'm mentioning this as a tangent, only because this Wadi El Kelt, this name means something to me as to what he says above Et Taiba and other place names that the commentary comes up with. These Arabic names mean nothing to me. Okay, so we go on in the commentary. No smith. As the smith was the maker of weapons, the deportation of smiths was a simple and effective method of denying arms to a conquered people. Weapons already made would have been confiscated. So also Nebuchadnezzar included smiths among those he deported in 2 Kings. So in the Babylonian exile, well, in the conquest, the Babylonian conquest of Judah, we find a reference to this in 2 Kings for the exile of smiths. To sharpen, better to forge. It is the word used in Genesis 4, the forger of every cutting instrument. Sharpening could have been done at home with the use of a whetstone. And the price of the filing was a pim, better, and the charge was a pim. This phrase gave Bible scholars endless trouble until the discovery of a number of early Hebrew weights at Lachish and elsewhere marked with the word pim, which made it clear that the pim, see, that's what I said, the commentary will tell us an archaeological discovery, which made it clear that the pim was a unit of weight and therefore, like a shekel, a unit of value. The pim was worth approximately two-thirds of a shekel. So I don't know, it's like you have a shekel and you have a euro. And maybe the pim is like the modern euro. So it's a different currency that was in use at the time. And so the pim was 2/3 of a shekel. That is about 2 shillings of our money. So 2 shillings, remember, this is published in England, this commentary, from the 60s, the 50s or the 60s. So 2 shillings then, who knows how much it's worth now. But if account is taken of the very much greater purchasing power of money in Bible times, it's evident that the charge is exorbitant and that the purpose of the verse is to indicate the extreme pressure of the Philistines on the Israelites. The word rendered filing by A.J. Pitzira, to press, urge, or induce, and should be translated inducement, fee, or charge. So it's like a tariff or a high surcharge. Okay? For the forks with 3 teeth, Pilcher suggests that in the Hebrew words so rendered, shalosh kilshon, there is likewise a reference to a unit of value, which is so far unknown, but must have been considerably greater than the pim. The suggestion is intriguing, for it's strange that the one charge should be made for all the instruments mentioned in this verse, and it would not be surprising that the charge for forging the axe and the goad, which could be used for military purposes, should have been prohibitive. Neither sword nor spear, but they had other weapons, for example, slings, bows, and staves. The pass of Michmas, the deep ravine between Michmas and Geva. The Philistines threw out an advanced post from their main camp to one of the cliffs of the very edge of the valley, with the view of watching the Israelites in Geva opposite and preventing a surprise attack on their camp. It was this post which Jonathan attacked. Okay, so you think about these old-time Western movies where you have either the cowboys on a hill looking over the valley, seeing the Native Americans gathered, or vice versa. That's kind of like the image here, looking out to gain knowledge of gathering of troops. Okay, so let's look at altar on these verses, beginning on page 309 in ancient Israel, below the line. To Givat Benjamin, it looks improbable that Samuel would now go off after this confrontation to Giv'ah, which is Saul's hometown. The text at this point in the Septuagint has him going on the way, leaving the more likely outcome that he abandoned Saul and his small handful of men at Gibeah to tackle the Philistines. About 600 men. By this point, 1,400 have slipped away. Right? Remember that he had about 2,000 men at the beginning of the chapter with him. The Shu'al region, the name literally means Foxland, Zevoim Valley or Jackal Valley. No smith could be found in all the land of Israel. This bit of background notation vividly reflects the abject status of the Israelites under Philistine domination. Ironsmiths are banned among them to prevent their developing the weaponry needed for rebellion. His sickle, so now the translation of the tools is different here. Plowshare, mattock, axe, and sickle. That's the translation of the 4 words. The reading used here is as the Septuagint cher mesho instead of the Masoretic machareshato, his plowshare, which repeats the first term in the list. And then on 310, the price of sharpening was a pim. The italicized term occurs only here in the Bible, but archaeologists have found stone weights marked pim, which is 2/3 of a shekel, here evidently a silver shekel. The Philistines then not only deprive the Israelites of the technology for making weapons, but also reap a profit from their smithless vassals for the maintenance of the agricultural tools they need for their livelihood. The 3-pronged forks, a commonly proposed emendation, yields 1/3 of a shekel for the forks and the axes and for the setting of the goads. This change would make sense if, in fact, the sharpening of these implements were half the work of sharpening plowshares and mattocks, but that is not entirely clear. Okay, so the tools are being sharpened. People are being prepared to go to war against a very heavy army. Okay, so let's start chapter 14. Let's read the first 5 sentences. Vayehi hayom, vayomer Yonatan ben Shaul el hana'ar nosei chelav, lecha v'nabra el matzav plishtim, asher me'ever halaz, ula aviv lo higid. So now a day came, and Jonathan, son of Saul, said to his servant, who is his arms bearer, let's go cross over to the Philistine garrison that's over there. Me'ever halaz. Let's go. That's over on the other side. Right? We were just told in verse 23 that it's on the Michmas side. So Jonathan says one day, let's go over there. So they're at a standoff. And why they're at a standoff, I don't understand. 600 against 6,000 horsemen and 30,000 chariots doesn't seem exactly a threat to the Philistines. And what they're waiting for, I don't know. But they're waiting, and so one day Jonathan says to his arms bearer, let's go over to the Philistine garrison, and parenthetically it tells us at the end of the sentence, it wasn't told to his father. So like Saul had no idea that Jonathan and his arms bearer were invading enemy territory. 2. V'Shaul Yoshev b'ktsei hagiva tachat harimon asher be-migron, v'ha'am asher imo keshesh me'ot ish. And Saul was sitting at the edge of Giva under a pomegranate tree that was in Migron. So it says under the pomegranate tree that's in Migron. So because it's referred to this way, the pomegranate tree in Migron, everybody who reads this is supposed to know, oh yeah, I know that pomegranate tree. It's like the Y oak on the Eastern Shore, right? Everybody's supposed to know the Y oak. So this is the Migron pomegranate tree, and that's where Saul is sitting. Now, a pomegranate tree could provide shade, but it's not especially big. Pomegranate trees aren't especially big, at least pomegranate trees that are in an orchard, so they're pruned. I don't know how big a pomegranate tree can get, and I don't know how old they can get also. Unlike olive trees that can live for thousands of years and get bigger and wider, I'm not sure about pomegranate trees. Anyway, somehow this is a famous pomegranate tree in Migron, and the people with him were about 600 men. Okay, verse 3. Va'achia ben Achituv, Achi Ichavod, ben Pinchas ben Eli, Kohen Adonai, Beshilo, Nosei Ephod, V'ha'am lo yada ki halach Yonatan. Okay, this is the first time in a long time we're hearing about the Kohen in Shiloh. So, Jonathan has gone over to the Philistine garrison. Saul is under a pomegranate tree with 600 men with him. And now verse 3, Achiah, son of Achituv, the brother of Ichavod, or in English would be Ichabod, right? In founding father days, Ichabod is this, Ichavod. So, Achiah, son of Achituv, the brother of Ichavod, son of Pinchas, son of Eli, Kohen of God in Shiloh, the bearer of an ephod. So he was the Kohen at the time. And the people did not know that Jonathan had gone. 4. Uvein hama berot asher bikesh Yonatan la'avur al matzav plishtim shein hasela me ha'ever mizeh v'shein hasela me ha'ever mizeh v'shem ha'echad botzetz v'shem ha'echad seneh. Okay, and so between the passes that Jonathan looked to pass through to the Philistine garrison, there was a rocky crag, literally a tooth in the rock, but it's translated as a rocky crag on one side, and there was a rocky crag on the other side, and the name of one rocky crag was Botzetz, and the name of the other was Seneh. I don't know, it's like the Billy Goat's Trail along the Potomac, so is that rocky crag called Billy Goat? There are other kind of crags along the Shenandoah that have these names. So that rocky crag is called Botzetz, and the other one is called Seneh. So this is where Jonathan is. And for the reader, us, at the time that this was written, we're supposed to know exactly where Jonathan is by these references, and we're supposed to know where Saul is to the reference to that pomegranate tree. 5. Hashein ha'echad matzuk mitzafon mul michmas V'ha'achad minegev mul gava. So the one crag rose up north from Michmas, and the other south across from Geva. Okay, so that's where these crags are located. So let's look at the commentary on these 5 sentences. Bottom of 74, that bore his armor as personal attendant. 75, he told not his father, for fear that he would be forbidden the reckless attempt. From this point to the end of verse 5, we have a series of parenthetical clauses describing in circumstantial detail the situation in which the attack was made. Jonathan's words are resumed in verse 6. Uttermost part of Giv'ah. Giv'ah here seems to denote a district. Saul's headquarters were probably some distance in the rear of his army at Geva and nearer Giv'ah than Geva. Only a few miles separate the two places. Migron, evidently a district near Giv'ah, but not the same as the Migron in Isaiah 10, which lay to the north. So these place names in the Bible get confusing, and the commentary pointing out that one place name in one place should not be confused with the same place name in a different place. Achia, as his name had not been had been mentioned before, his genealogy is given in full. The priest of the Lord in Shiloh, the words referred to Eli, who had been priest in Shiloh. An ephod, the high priest's ephod, on which was suspended the breastplate containing the Urim and Tumim, which would be, those stones would be consulted when going to war. 4, the scene of Jonathan's exploit is described in vivid detail, and the writer was obviously familiar with the site. The passes, ravines, or beds of streams running down into the main valley, by which Jonathan descended the southern slope and then ascended the steep cliff opposite. In the valley are two hills of a conical or rather spherical form, having steep rocky sides with small wadis running up behind each, so as almost to isolate them. One is on the side towards Jeba and the other towards Muchmas. These would seem to be the two rocks mentioned in connection with Jonathan's adventure, quoted by Kirkpatrick. So in other words, this Kirkpatrick, this biblical scholar, going to Israel to check out the geography, seems to say, I know now what the Bible is referring to. So, so it's just fascinating stuff. You might have seen in the Times of Israel a couple days ago that a piece of stone with cuneiform on it, which is in the Assyrian language, refers to a tax that was imposed by Sennacherib against Judah. So this little piece of stone found in the archaeological dig that's going on in Jerusalem. It's a constant kind of sifting through stuff, figuring out what you're going to find. And this little cuneiform cube is a reference to something we learn about in the Bible. So the Bible is not always, is never, well, some parts of the Bible seem to be meant to be read as history, but because it's the Bible, you can't count on it, because it's not meant, its original intention is not to be history, but rather religious. But if you kind of learn history secondarily, then that's fascinating stuff. Like, in other words, if we were ever to find Noah's Ark, that would be really cool. But the purpose of the Ark, the Noah's Ark story, is not to teach us history, but to teach us a lesson about the evil of humanity and God's role in the world. Okay? If you happen to find Noah's Ark, okay, that'd be really cool to say that the story actually happened. But that's not the point. That's not the point of the Bible, and that shouldn't be the point of Jews reading the Bible, that we're supposed to assume that everything that happened in the Bible is history. But when things can be proven that refer to stories in the Bible, that just is really cool. So Kirkpatrick thinks he sees in that wadi between Jeba and Muchmas towns that have those names from the Bible. Okay, so that's pretty cool if you think you found exactly where it was.
the cuneiform that was found,
Yeah.
you said that relates to something in the Bible that tells that story about the tax.
Uh-huh. Yes.
But where is that? That's a later book?
Yes, it's
The
in Two
Assyrian
Kings. It's in Two
and
Kings.
Kings.
But
Okay.
if you just search the article about it in Times of Israel,
No, I read it. I read it. I
yeah,
just wasn't sure what the reference was because, I mean, I know that there's this whole discussion that Jews were never in that area, and of course, there's the Egyptian stele that says the Israelites or the
right,
Hebrews. I think it was the Israelites have been vanquished; their seed is no more.
right.
Wouldn't this be another example of that?
Well,
Because it's referencing attacks on the tribe of Judah.
yes, yes. So, it depends on what side of the political issue we're on. If one is on the anti-Zionist, Zionism is colonialism, Jews were never in Israel side, then you want to follow the narrative of the Palestinians who try to share bits and pieces of stories that on their side would prove that Israel was never there. But of course, we know that Israel was there, and there's plenty of evidence for that. It's just, in today's day and age, you pick and choose what facts you choose to believe in and what facts are actual facts. So,
But the cuneiform
yeah,
that references attacks on Judah,
yeah.
I mean that's an archaeological piece of evidence, isn't it?
You would think so. You would think so, but no archaeological. Well, it's rare that archaeological evidence is 100% definitive as to what it means. Okay, so how did that cuneiform cube get there? Well, it just turns out. I think the article said the clay is from the Tigris River. So that's pretty cool, right? So that the person who carved the cuneiform into that clay clearly had clay from the Assyrian Empire, because Israel was Israel. It did not extend to the Tigris River. So that either somebody in Israel could have traded for a piece of clay from the Assyrian territory, but you wouldn't need to do that because there's plenty of clay in the land of Israel. So it just, anyway, again, you read and interpret the way you want to, and either most scholars agree, despite whatever narrative they might be coming from, because scholarship wins out in the end and not false narratives, or scholars like scientists under the Nazis were willing to use their science to promote Nazi ideology. So you're either willing to sell your soul to the devil or not. So anyway, just yes, that's a that's an extreme tangent that I went on, and I'm sorry about that. But it's just it's just a comment on the nature of our world today and how fractured it is and how dangerous it is. Both Sates were on the bottom of 75. That is shining, as the northern crag shines brightly during the day, and the southern cliff is almost entirely in shade. It is likely that the crag on the Michmas side was so named. Sene, and on page 76, G.A. Smith suggests that the word means thorny because without vowels, you would also get the word sneh, which means bush. And the crag received its name from the abundance of thorns which grew on it. Okay, so let's look at alter on these first 5 sentences. On 311. But his father he did not tell, One assumes that his father would have forbidden him to go out on so dangerous a mission. But there is also an implicit contrast between Saul, sitting under the pomegranate tree, hesitant to act in the face of the superior forces of the enemy, and Jonathan prepared to execute a daring commando raid. Achiah, son of Achituv, brother of Ichabod. The genealogy here casts a certain suspect light on Saul, the priest who accompanies him to the battlefield, and whose prognostication he relies, belongs to the blighted and rejected house of Eli. Right, so we know that from the beginning of the book, if not the end of Judges, the beginning of Samuel, how the sons of Eli corrupted the priesthood and demanded payment for offering sacrifices and all that. Bearer of the ephod, the title Nosei Ephod is formally parallel to armor bearer Nosei Kelim, and so suggests a contrast between Saul, who relies on divination, and Jonathan, who relies on his weapons. The pass through which Jonathan sought to cross over, the Philistines and the Israelites are encamped on the tops of two steep hills facing each other, and with a deep gully or wadi running between them. Jonathan and his armor bearer are able to make their way down the slope unseen by taking cover among the crags and under overhangs. But Jonathan realizes that there will be a moment of truth in this tactic, for when they reach the floor of the gully, they will be exposed to the Philistine outpost. And on 3:12, verse 5, loomed, the Hebrew mutzak means literally column. It might conceivably be a scrambled scribal repetition of the next Hebrew word in the text, mitzafon, from the north. Okay, so it's 10:22, so let's stop here for today. We'll pick up again in 2 weeks, right? Next Friday, I'm not here, but we'll pick up again in 2 weeks from today. Hope everybody has a good rest of the day, and Shabbat Shalom, and see you all soon.
But shalom.